say, right? So, today we're going to be cracking out some gum again. We're going to go for the apple flavour that we had in a video previously. I've increased the gain for this one, just trying out a few different settings, seeing how they are received, if they're received at all. We're going to go with some apple gum, and today, you'll be able to tell by the title, we're going to go through one of the tier lists. Just think it's kind of fun to do. So we're going to do that. We're going to get some gum and get going. I got it all set up on the side, and we're going to start with, we'll see how far we get in terms of time, but we're going to start with at least ranking the 5th edition's D&D character classes, which I think I'm going to do a little bit of like maybe talk about why I put them in that position, and maybe some experiences with them. So I'm just going to get some gum first, and then we can start. Get a couple of pieces. There we go again. Alright. Hope you're ready for this. So, let's move on over. Here we go. So, this might not be too meaningful to anyone that doesn't know or play D&D, but we're going to do it anyway. So, we've got a whole bunch of classes here. I have just realised that artificer isn't on here, which is fine. We'll just go with what we've got. So, these are all the D&D classes. I've played every single one of these at one point or another. I'm gonna talk a little bit about them. So those of you that may or may not be familiar with D&D, there are classes, and then there are subclasses. We're not doing that today. There is another tier list for that, which I have got loaded up if we have time. But we're not gonna be doing subclasses. It's just the normal main classes. I might take into account the kind of subclasses available, but really, I'm measuring these on just like personal taste, things that I feel about it. This isn't about what is the strongest class. This is just my opinion of what I enjoy, what I have experience with. So, we're going to kick things off. I'm going to go through the classes each. So we've got Barbarian, we've got Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. So, we're going to go alphabetically. We're just going to start. We might move things around and some opinions might change. That's fine. So, we're going to start things off with Barbarian. So, Barbarians are interesting. Their primary role is as a tank to absorb damage, and then secondary to deal melee damage in a fight, but they're mostly there to absorb damage. Now, I have played a Barbarian before. I'm trying to remember the specific context it was in. When was it? this Strahd game that didn't last for very long. A party, well, I was playing a fighter originally, a human fighter, how original, but he got turned to the dark side by Strahd, and so I came back with a dwarven barbarian, and we decided to try and break into Castle Ravenloft almost immediately. We died, so I have a bit of experience with barbarian, not a lot. Now, I've got a hot take, which is that barbarians are very simple to play. There's not a lot you have to really know about them. You just got to remember to rage, to take half damage, and to attack with your weapon. But otherwise, even their subclasses are very minimal. One of them is really just to take half damage from basically anything, and the others kind of interesting. But I personally, and I'm gonna have some people really show me here. I know it. My hot take. Where's it gonna go? C. Why C? Well, I don't think it's necessarily a bad class, but I don't really get a lot of thrill out of playing the class itself. I think most of the others have some really interesting roleplay elements that immediately bite into the character, but it feels like Barbarian is one of the classes that feels the most distant from roleplay, and that might not sound like it makes a lot of sense, but with a cleric you have a god, with a monk you might have an order, same with a paladin, an oath. My hot take is that it just doesn't have the same kind of element of roleplay potential. And not because barbarians just have to be stupid, mindless machines, it's not that. It's just that I don't think being a barbarian adds to what you can develop as the character. Just being a barbarian on their own won't create something particularly interesting. I'm sure there are plenty of people that can do just that. That's just my personal opinion, and why I wouldn't play a barbarian. I also just don't really like, I don't mind playing tanks, but I like something, this sounds so arrogant, but something a bit more cerebral, that I can think about more, and you'll probably see that in a moment when I go through my classes with spellcasters. So the next is Bard. So a Bard is a character that is basically an artist. Doesn't have to be a musician, could be a storyteller or a poet or a painter. Their whole thing is that they are basically musicians. As I said, they don't have to be, but that's just the default idea. They're creative that use their creative charismatic selves to influence the world through magic. At later levels they have abilities that allow you to dip into other classes' spell lists, which is something I think is really cool. Their inspiration, bardic inspiration, can help people by giving extra dice. I hope that isn't picked up. Little car driving away. Their primary role is as support, so healing, buffing, doing a few things like that. But they also have some fun damage spells, and their roleplay potential is pretty high. I would say that I've been playing Bard probably the second longest of any of these characters. Pretty sure. Certainly in consistency. And I would put Bard in A. I've had probably the most fun playing a Bard. I think they're really, really fun to play. Tons of roleplay opportunity because of their high charisma. It lends itself to that, to talking with NPCs and doing deals on behalf of the party. It's fun to do some poetry, do some writing as the character, and vicious mockery is just hands down the funniest spell in the game. So Bard's up there. Now we move on to Cleric. Cleric. A cleric is a religious, typically, class where the character has devoted themselves to a god, and specifically to a domain. So you have clerics of life, of war, of knowledge, of nature, of light, and certain gods have certain domains, but you don't have to just stick to them. You can be a bit creative depending on your GM. Now I played a cleric for not too long. I'd say a few months in a game. I enjoyed my time playing them, but I think, oh my god, I think someone's lowing their morn. They're lowing their morn outside. Yeah, I think it's being picked up right in the background. I might have to reduce the gain a bit. Reduce the gain. That is just so poorly timed. So clerics are, as I said, religious folk. They use their magic to support and heal. I played one for a short while, enjoyed playing them, but ultimately returned to an older character. Not because I didn't like the class, but I just felt like I missed that character. I'm going to put cleric up on A. I'm going to put cleric up here because I think the roleplay potential of having a god is very, very good, very high. I love, as a GM, having clerics in the party that I can use gods to roleplay as and with the character. I think it's a lot of fun. I love players that really lean into the cleric route and like pray to their god and really go full force into it. Lots of fun. Now obviously the best healer in the game, the most healing spells, resurrection magic, and have an entire class based around healing people to the max they can. They also have a subclass that lets you cancel a crit, which I think is very, very fun. And I'll move us on to Druid. So Druids are nature-based characters, typically, that have an affinity with nature and the natural world. They have a base ability that lets them turn into animals, and yeah, I've played a Druid for a little bit, not very long. Started a campaign, it kind of fell through many, many years ago, but I played a Druid who was being hunted down by a grove because she was to be sacrificed, and she didn't like that. So Druids. B. Why did I personally, I don't have a great deal of experience with the class. However, I think I've seen enough to go. It's not wholly for me. One of the reasons I put it in B is that I think it really only has one subclass that people ever really consider, which is Circle of the Moon, which allows you to turn into more powerful animals, and as a bonus action rather than an action. I think a lot of other people want to play other subclasses of Druid, but none of them feel quite as reliable or as fun as playing a Circle of the Moon that lets you turn into really strong animals. And for that reason, I think it lacks a lot of replayability, because if you choose another subclass other than the Circle of the Moon, you kind of start to wish you had just played Circle of the Moon. So I'm going to put that in B. It's a fun class, some good opportunity for natural magic and some roleplay to do with that, but unfortunately its subclasses let it down. Fighter. Now, I played Fighter a few times. I mentioned earlier I played one in the Strahd game. I then later played another Fighter. So, where am I going to put Fighter? I'm going to put Fighter. Some of you may already have guessed this. It is. I know, quite a bold take. I think Fighter is one of the best classes. Not because it's all round just a well-designed class, but for a handful of reasons. Firstly, you get a number of ability score increases that can be used for feats more than most other classes. You get them pretty regularly, meaning you can really design a real in-depth character that is really specialised. The second reason, I think, was highlighted by Tasha's Guide to Everything. Is that what it's called? Cauldron of Everything. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Is that fighters can be so wildly different. In the game that I used to stream, I had a samurai fighter who was a Way of the Samurai. Oh no, it wasn't Way of the Samurai. That would be I'm thinking of monk there. It was basically the samurai subclass, and then I had an arcane archer. Those two characters played completely different, yet they were the exact same class. And I think you'd struggle to find another class that is able to do something to that degree. Most other classes feel very samey. No matter what character you play, what subclass you pick, so having more than one of them poses a risk. But Fighter isn't like that. You can have a fighter who uses a bow, one who uses two different swords, a great weapon fighter, an unarmed fighter who just goes in and brawls with their fists. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do when you play a fighter that makes it so wildly different, and the subclasses go from being a psionic fighter to having being part wizard and being an eldritch fighter with spells to complement the attacks. You can use magic with your arrows, arcane archer. You can be a champion and increase your chances of critting. Overall, I think they're one of the best design classes because there's a lot of versatility, and you can play a fighter a number of times in different games and always feel different character. So that brings us on to monk. Now, I said originally this is very personal and based on my personal feelings of just how I enjoyed the classes. And now we come to monk. Now, I played a monk for well over a year. It's the longest character I've played. I played it in a dragonized game that led into Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which we never finished, but got pretty far down. And I'm going to put monk up here. Now, this will shock people because monk is one of those that people think is one of the worst classes. I couldn't disagree more for a couple of reasons. Firstly, my first experience of playing a monk. Wait, hold on, that's not what I meant to say. Oh, I know what I was trying to say. I would normally put monk above fighter here, but I think because of fighter's versatility, I'm going to put it ahead of monk. Monk is up there for a couple of abilities and my personal experience of playing the character. It's been my favourite character to play. I had her go from Way of the Drunken Fist to Kensei. I really enjoyed playing her. Just generally a really, really fun character. Now, it isn't just up there because I enjoyed playing her. She's also up there, or the monk is up there, because during the game, there was a moment where we were intimidating someone in Scalp, and to prove that we weren't worth dealing with, I jumped out of the window of a 200-foot high building. Jumped out the window and dropped to my death. But I'm a monk, so I have slow fall, which means I landed without any injury. I rolled above, my number was over what I needed to. Wait, let me describe that again. So slow fall is something like 5 times your monk level. Is damage you negate from full damage. The damage dice that were rolled was under it, so I didn't take any damage. Just landed at the bottom and came back up undamaged, and we were like, I just jumped out this building and took no damage. Do you really want to fuck with us? And it worked. That was reason number one. Really specific instance, but just a memory that stuck with me. The second, Stunning Strike is just the best ability in the game. I won't know anything else about it. The ability to stun an enemy for an entire round and have a number of attempts at it on your turn is just so good. We came up against a lich. We were level 9. He cast an 8th level fireball. I didn't take any damage because I can dodge if I succeed. I didn't take any damage. I managed to get up behind him, and he failed every single stunning strike constitution save. And obviously he didn't get stunned, but I used up all of his legendary resistances, and then the next round I stunned him and we just wailed on him. And the GM was, because we were taking a break from the campaign, so the GM was hoping that the lich would kill us, but we ended up beating it. And so he just kind of had us lose, which I know some people would be like, oh, why would you do that? That's just like railroading. I mean, we all knew that we were taking a break from the campaign. I don't think we realised that this was his intention to get rid of us, but yeah. Anyway, I'm now rambling about stories. Maybe I'll do a video talking about like D&D stories. I've also got a tea here, which I can see is going cold. Try not to swallow my gum there. The apple and the tea does not mix very well. Alright. Paladin. I played Paladin for a very short while. I've seen a lot of people play Paladins, all in different ways. But ultimately, they're kind of the same. My experience with playing a Paladin, I played it, I've never played it as an ongoing character, only ever like a few one-shots. I played one that was just going to be, I didn't really want to lean into the magic side of it. It was going to be kind of through miracles. It was an old drunkard knight who dedicated himself to an order, but he was a drunkard. Didn't really get to play much of that. Then I played, what was it? I'm trying to think now. Oh, an orcish paladin. As like a filling character, I left my sheet at home for my current sheet, and we were in the middle of a dungeon. And so the GM was like, just roll something up on D&D Beyond, and I made a paladin and used him. I used him once, I think. Paladins have some fun kind of special abilities that make them quite interesting, and I've been playing a paladin as my main character in Baldur's Gate 3. And I've kind of fallen in love with the class. That said, I could only really see myself playing a paladin once, because a lot of the subclasses feel very similar, and unlike fighter, where I feel like I could get a lot of leverage out of it, and this is true for a lot of other classes as well. I just feel like there's so much that's tied to the stereotype of a paladin that it's hard to get out of it. So for that reason, I'm going to put it above druid in B. Ranger. Okay, look, I'm going to preface this. Ranger has had a bit of a facelift in the recent years. It was never awful to begin with, but I do like the kind of commentary about you can just make your ranger racist by having their favourite enemy be a specific race of humanoids. But that I think needed tweaking. I don't think it's a perfect class. In my opinion, it feels like just a middle ground between fighter and druid. And I've seen some fun subclasses, but I guess my hot take about Ranger is that, unlike many of the ones on here, the subclasses are the things that make the class worth playing. I'm not a big fan of some of the other stuff, like the abilities. I think they're very, very niche, and you know, it's really good that you can move at double speed or forage without need to worry about it in your favourite terrain, but that's really specific. And because of that, playing a ranger is a choice. You have to know the campaign you're playing in. If you're playing a ranger and your favourite terrain is a coast and your favourite enemy is a giant, but you're playing in fucking Descent into Avernus and find yourself for the most of the module in the Nine Hells, there's no point in playing that character because you're never really going to be able to use your abilities. And so some of the ranger stuff is fun, and I think the Beastmaster element, having a beast companion, is the one thing that really, really elevates that class. But because of that, C. Oh, I can't put it, but there we go. Now, the reason I put it ahead of barbarian is because I think the animal companion makes it more interesting if you play that. But also, I just think there's a lot more roleplay opportunity. This is such a long video. I didn't even realise it was going to be this long again. You guys are getting fucking blessed with the length of these videos. And now there is a truck reversing somewhere. I'm going to go through the last ones kind of quickly because I don't want this to be too long, otherwise it will never upload or render. So, the next is a rogue. So, a rogue. Look, I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not really into rogues. I think they have a lot of roleplay opportunity. I think they can be really varied, especially when you look at like the swashbuckler. But I think that thief and assassin are kind of the same. The abilities are different, but the tone is basically the same. I think you can make a character that can be a kind of a con man. I just wish there was a choice to be able to lean more into like charisma and stuff with a rogue, to really get that heightened experience of being able to be different kinds of roguish individuals. On paper it feels like it should be the same as fighter, but it doesn't always feel that way, because fighter really is very versatile, whereas rogue, I feel like it ends up devolving back into like, I'm gonna stealth. At least that's my opinion on it. No, like, I'm not outing anyone about how they play rogues, by the way. It's just how I feel about how I would approach playing them, and I just feel like it's not as versatile as some of the others, in terms of its roleplay, but, you know, maybe that's just me. Now for that reason I'm going to whack it over and up. I'm going to put it after Paladin, before Druid, on B. Sorcerer now. Now, I think the defining thing that makes a difference with Sorcerer is the spell points, not the spell points, sorry, the sorcery points, which make a big difference to this particular class and stuff with meta magic. Now, I like the idea of sorcerers. I never really vibe with them very much. I played a sorcerer for a one shot, and I've played it for something else, but I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, which may speak volumes of itself, but it never felt particularly like... I always felt like if I'm playing a sorcerer, I might as well just play a wizard instead. It was really just for the sake of having a character whose magic came innately to them. Now I've seen someone who suggested a way of playing a sorcerer that would be much more akin to actually playing it the way that it feels like it should, which is you have a certain number of spells that you can that you know, but you don't know what those spells are yet. Basically, the moment you decide to cast a certain spell, it becomes added to your repertoire. So you start off with a sorcerer and say you know 3 different spells. You just know that there are 3 spells a sorcerer can cast, but you wait until a moment where you want to cast a spell to pick it. That way it's like, oh my god, I can cast Featherfall and I didn't know, and it might be because you get pushed off a building, and in that moment you know, I need to cast Featherfall, so you cast it, and now that spell is one of the spells that you can learn, that you know. But that's not built into the game, that is very GM dependent, and for that reason I'm really sorry. Also because you can get the meta magic feat and basically do very similar things with any other spellcaster. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B. I know it's a very hot take there, but I just don't really like sorcerers. We're going to move on to warlocks now. warlocks have probably, along with clerics, the best kind of RP. They have such widely different subclasses. Their spellcasting is alright, but it's the payoff for having a lot of other abilities. The eldritch invocations and stuff. I would say this is probably one of the most chocked out classes in the game. It is viciously unique and I love it. And I actually had a number for this, or a position for this beforehand, but I'm actually about to change it. I'm putting it up in S, because the roleplay of having a patron is to die for. As a GM, I love role-playing patrons even more than gods, because gods have kind of like passive agenda. Well, no, it doesn't have to be like that, but you know, a deity feels very different to like, my patron is a mind flayer, and it has a very mortal conception of what it wants. Or something to that effect, you know. So I'm going to put it there. Now we come to wizard. Now, I think you can probably guess by what I'm about to say where I'm going to put this. Wizard is my favourite class, along with monk. But wizards, other than maybe healing, are some of the most versatile in terms of what they can do with their spells. You could be a damage dealer or a support, buff your allies, be super into like illusions and stuff like that, or conjure a bunch of creatures. Now obviously each of the other classes have spells like that, but you're able to really focus it down with a wizard, plus the ability to just learn spells and add them so that you can prepare them. Feels unlimited, only pulled back by the amount of money you have and the content your GM gives you. I love having wizards in parties. I love playing wizards. I love playing an intellectual with an intelligence. I don't know, maybe that says a lot about me, maybe, I don't know. But wizards are my favourite class, and for that reason, I'm going to put them at the top of S. So that rounds us out. In S we have wizard, fighter, monk, warlock. In A we have bard and cleric. In B we have paladin, rogue, druid, sorcerer. And finally in C we have ranger and barbarian. I didn't feel that any deserved to be in D, but perhaps you think differently. This is my layout. If you have any opinions on it, let me know in the comments. Perhaps you want to tell me about where you would have positioned them.